You may have heard about the new tariffs impacting PC component prices by now, with increases upwards of 10% to 25% by January 1st. We've spoken with several companies and individuals in the industry to better understand how PC builders can expect prices to increase. On our list of those providing insight is EVGA CEO Andrew Hahn, NZXT, SilverStone, and Alphacool, among off-record insight from others. In the very least, North American buyers can anticipate price increases as a result of the current administration's new tariffs. It's just a question of how much of that price is passed on to the consumer. Before that, this video is brought to you by PowerColor's Red Dragon Vega 56, which is now below MSRP on Newegg at $380 with a rebate from the 28th to the 30th of September. When we first tested Vega 56, we found the card competitive and fun for tweaking and modding, and now that it's back in stock, it's worth consideration. Vega 56 also comes with 3 free games, including Assassin's Creed Odyssey, Star Control, and Strange Brigade while supplies last. Learn more at the link below. Here's the TLDR of the tariffs. Everything imported from China that is a computer component, for the most part, will be affected. So that's almost everything you buy within this specific industry. There are a few exceptions, we'll go through those, but most of the things you buy, if you were in North America for sure, will be affected. If you're not in North America, there could still be an outward-reaching effect. So even if you're in Europe, even though these tariffs obviously don't apply to you, since they are US tariffs imposed on Chinese imports, even if you're in Europe, you might feel some effect of this because companies are going to be trying to stabilize their revenue sources as they are compensating for potential downtrend in overall sales, especially in the US market. So the tariffs were pushed into law by the US federal government, with the first 10% tariff taking effect October 1st of this year. And then after that, it's a total 25% tariff, so there's another 15% tariff that will be imposed by January 1st of 2019. So total impact will be about 25% increase in cost to bring the goods into the US ports or North American ports into the US port and then distribute it to Canada, for example. So that's the total impact. 10% by October 1st, that's the most immediate, and we'll be facing that within a couple of days here. We're looking at over a 25% increase in product import prices by next year, which will be passed on to consumers. The full list of tariffs includes power supplies, motherboards, video cards, complete system builds, sometimes, SLI and NV link bridges, SSDs, mousepads, mice, keyboards and mice, only if bundled together, but not if sold separately. For the keyboards, that is. CPU coolers are affected, cases, chairs, and more. The tariff cost is applied as goods come into port. Technically, it is the company that must pay the tariffs, but those costs will be passed along to consumers. This isn't because the companies are evil, it's because, as a reminder, a lot of the margin in this industry is very low. So some video cards we've worked with recently have profit margins of under 3%, like 2.8, for example, on one of the cards we recently benchmarked. There's an average of around 4%. Very few cards reach even an 8% margin. The retailers often profit more than the video card makers in terms of strict margin. And all this means that it's impossible for the manufacturers to bear the burden of a tariff increase without consumers also paying more for the products they buy. The most heavily impacted companies are those which make electrical components that come from China. So that would include all of them. Even case manufacturers are getting hit here because aluminum and steel are included on the list of affected items, and of course some of those cases do include power supplies or other electronics. Very few manufacturers in this industry make things outside of China, and it's typically Taiwan when it's made elsewhere. Taiwan isn't tooled up with enough factories to allow for a mass switchover of manufacturing, but it does have a few low-capacity factories like Gigabyte's motherboard and video card factory, a few case factories like Inwin's and Lian Li's, but not much more than that. Even still, all of these companies make more goods in China than not and will still be affected. One off-record industry source told us that some companies will likely offset prices by greater than the 25% import overhead, as the time cost to money carries a value as well. Companies now won't be able to invest as much of their money elsewhere, like ordering more product, because they need to free up budget to pay the extra import fees or the tariffs. This has a knock-on effect where the companies lose spending power and will charge consumers more to try and make up for it. The need-to-know information is as follows. October 1st is when you're going to see the first 10% tariff impact But whether or not it affects you depends on warehouse inventory. We'll talk about that in a moment. There's an additional 15% January 1st, and then the companies are currently trying to stockpile inventory in warehouses as much as they can because the tariff, the extra money being paid on these imports, takes effect when it gets to port, and that's October 1st or later for the first 10%. So anything they can bring in before October 1st, and this has been going on for the last few months now as they've prepared, is not going to be affected by this increase. And depending on the company, hopefully most of them will not be passing along the tariff on products that they imported before it took effect, but we'll see how that plays out. So companies with larger warehouses in the US will fare better during this cycle. EVGA has a pretty small warehouse in the US as an example. Gigabyte has limited warehouse space as well, but from what we understand, a decent amount still. So having more warehouse space, bringing more stuff in before the tariffs take effect will benefit the consumer because you shouldn't have to pay that extra cost because they didn't have to pay that extra cost unless, of course, they all decide to profiteer off of it anyway, but we really have no way of validating that. So inventory that makes it in before the tariff hike will dodge the cost increase to the manufacturers and hopefully consumers. And just for perspective as to how wide-reaching this is, if you think it's not affecting everyone, actually, the cost increase also applies to shipping cost increases here because as manufacturers are panicking and trying to get more of their stuff out of China and into the US before the tariff hike, shipping costs are going up, and we know this firsthand. So even outside of the tariff impact on cost of goods, for goods which are not affected by the tariffs, their shipping cost is still going up. Our own mod mats, for example, the ones we sell in the store, the one I have on the table here, shipping costs for these went up by 30% just because of the limited space on planes, on boats, whatever shipping mode you have. Even the trucks that go from the factories to the planes, it's limited. So that's driving the cost up to ship things, even for things which are not directly affected by the tariffs. A 30% increase on our shipping rates eats margin a lot, and you can bet that this also applies to computer part manufacturers. We've decided to keep our prices on the product the same, but that does mean we're profiting less as a result, and that's on a product with already a low margin. Some companies can't afford to do this if they're making things like video cards and power supplies because the margins are low enough that the increase in cost would destroy the margin and leave them losing money. We spoke with a few of our international and shipping logistics experts on these increases, and one of them provided the following comment. Quote, "The air and ocean rates, as I advised, are increasing due to the providers pulling space out of both air and ocean. Airlines have reduced their flights and steamship lines have reduced their capacities and allocations out of China. Imports from China continue to be strong and are increasing. However, with the next round of tariffs, imports will sharply start to decrease." Andrew Hahn, CEO of EVGA, told Gamers Nexus the following. "Thanks for reaching out and being proactive to educate the gaming community about the upcoming tariff and how it could impact gaming components. With the previous imposing tariff on China-made goods, so far the impact has been minimal to EVGA based on list number 1, effective July 6th. And list number 2, effective the 23rd of August. However, list number 3 will have a significant impact to the GPU, power supply, and motherboard categories for EVGA with a proposed 25% tariff. Since many key products are produced in China, the ultimate impact to the consumers is significant. To our knowledge, not all manufacturers, including EVGA, have sufficient capacity to produce all these products outside of China in the near term. With the upcoming holiday season, EVGA is trying its best to mitigate the impacts to the gaming customers. NZXT provided Gamers Nexus this statement. Unfortunately, the latest round of proposed tariffs on imports from China will very likely impact NZXT's products. If we cannot obtain a waiver or legally reclassify our goods, we'll be forced to increase our suggested retail prices to cover whatever tariff level is finally set. Currently, either a 10% or 25% increase is being considered. The timing for the increase would be directly tied to when the tariffed goods clear U.S. customs and move into our retail channels. The price increases would affect all of our North American customers, including Canada. NZXT continued by saying, quote, "Everyone at NZXT works very hard to deliver quality products and great service at fair prices. It would be regrettable to see our prices increased to customers in North America due to changes in our federal government's trade policy. If you wish to express your opinions on these policy decisions and how they are affecting you, you can find your elected officials at contactingcongress.org. SilverStone noted that all of its products have been classified as affected by the tariff, and the U.S. office will have to increase prices as a result. SilverStone noted the following to Gamers Nexus before the tariffs came into effect, Quote, "We are aware of the possible impact the tariffs will have on our products. We will raise prices if our own cost is affected and will not take advantage of the circumstances to increase our profit margin." Alphacool also replied to a request from comment and stated the following: "It seems Alphacool isn't affected by the tariffs as much as some of the other brands in the industry will be. Our prices on certain products will have to increase. These include, but are not exclusive to, our hard and soft tubing, our ice cam cable combs, and our alpha cord sleeving. This is due to them falling into categories that will have the increase implemented. We don't yet know how much of an effect it will have on the pricing for the end user. We're trying to keep them as low as possible still, but when a region implements an increase, unfortunately it has a knock-on effect. The US region is one that Alphacool is currently looking to be more active in, and the tariffs are not ideal. We don't think it will affect our end goal too much. You'll still be able to purchase our products at a reasonable price, and although the prices may go up slightly, we're committed to making the increases to the end user as easy to swallow as possible. We look like we're a little luckier than some of our friends in the industry, and we hope that other companies are not hit so hard that it isn't viable for them to continue trading. It is certainly a strange time for the industries." Gigabyte's statement to partners noted that notebooks, keyboards, memory, and headsets will be unaffected at this time, given existing memory price fixing concerns. This is a silver lining in otherwise bad news. "We don't fully understand why motherboards, power supplies, and mice can be affected, but laptops are somehow unaffected, but it has something to do with the fact that it's a pre-assembled complete unit." We also spoke with several of the larger component manufacturers off record who didn't want to go on record with a statement like some of these other companies. All of them, 100% of the people we spoke with, shared concerns of a 10 to 25% price increase from the tariffs and concerns of impact to consumer pricing as well. So, I mean, I can't remember a time when we've done something like this, reaching out to manufacturers where 100% of the people come back with the same answer, which is that they're all concerned about it. So this is real at this point. Alphacool was the closest manufacturer to one that expressed that they aren't heavily impacted, but that's because Alphacool doesn't trade too much in the US right now. They're trying to get into the US market. So these tariffs will absolutely affect Alphacool's ability to enter the US market and start serving a customer base here. And that's unfortunate. But as a company overall, they do most of their sales elsewhere outside of the US, so they aren't impacted quite as hard as some of the others. But they're the closest to a company that is less impacted, and it's still not completely unaffected. So this will be bad for the industry overall. It will hurt the consumers. It will hurt all the companies in it, including media, because even just on our side, you're looking at a follow-on impact of reduced advertising budget, because now companies have to worry about how do they afford the tariff cost. There is reduced affiliate revenue because consumers will probably be buying less, and we don't really benefit from the increased price if it's also everything is getting tariffed when it comes in. And consumers buying less just hurts everything, of course. So reduced interest as products become increasingly difficult to purchase is a problem. And the US market, even though it's about 40-something% of viewership for most of the YouTube channels you watch, it's the largest buying market, at least out of all the channels we know that use affiliate links and things like that. The US comprises most of the revenue. The US also has the highest advertising spend in terms of costs per 1,000 views. It's got the highest affiliate revenue payouts. So to lose a big chunk potentially of US-based sales of computer hardware will impact everybody, including the media. And if you want to get involved and are a US resident, your best bet, of course, is to vote appropriately. But as NZXT said, you can also go to contactingcongress.org. That was their recommendation to find your representatives if you don't know who they are. As for manufacturing, that's not leaving China anytime soon. Despite its old reputation for low quality, China now has some of the best facilities for manufacturing the products you buy on the planet. That includes things like motherboards and video cards. Of course, any country can have low quality as well, and they do, but the components you buy, all of them for your computer, including the ones that you like a lot, maybe high-end power supplies, high-end video cards, things like that. If there's a company that makes stuff you like a lot, there's an extremely high, absurdly high chance that at least some of the components in that product come from China, if not the entire product as a whole. So despite the old reputation, good stuff does come out of China. And it's just at the end of the day, the only stuff that can really be moved elsewhere to avoid potential tariff impact is primarily going to be things like a couple of motherboards and some video cards and some cases, and those will be going to Taiwan next door, where some factories already exist. But out of the companies we've spoken with, none of them have an immediate plan to start building new factories in Taiwan, because the tooling up cost of that is tremendous. And the concern from the companies we've spoken with is that an administration change or a decision flip on the tariffs could mean that that effort and money would be wasted if they start tooling up a factory and then the tariffs are wiped out. All of this stuff is reverted, something like that. Then it's just wasted money, wasted time, because it takes a while to get those factories up and running. So it's not like it's an instant flip over that they can do. And manufacturing in the US is just not even on the radar for all the companies we spoke with, which is really not all that surprising, knowing what we know. The entire supply chain is in Asia for this stuff. Like if you're making a motherboard, video card, power supply, capacitors come from Asia, Japan in a lot of cases. MOSFETs, Asia. Inductors, Asia. So the entire supply chain is already there, which means most of the manufacturing will likely stay there to avoid shipping stuff back and forth a whole lot. So that's where we stand right now. Aluminum and steel also affected by these tariffs, which means cases without electronics will be affected by these tariffs. And we did have notes from several case companies. Some of them did not want to go on record or were not yet prepared, but we'll probably get commentary from them soon enough. But the case company, SilverStone's in here. They went on record with an answer. NZXT's in here. But some of the other ones did strongly support our decision to make this video, because the concern, I think, for everyone in the industry right now that makes stuff is that consumers will see the price hikes and just feel like they're getting screwed for no reason, like it's just profiteering. And while that is certainly possible, it's possible that a company could import a lot of stuff now and increase the prices on it anyway. That surely could happen. The end game is that as we get through the current inventory, it's actually just going to be a straight tariff increase, and that will be passed on to you. So the companies we spoke with wanted to make sure that consumers understood that this isn't like the RAM price fixing concerns or the mining price, higher prices concerns that we saw over the last year. This is in fact a result of a federal government decision. It'll impact the US, almost certainly Canada, and then there can be a knock-on effect, as Alphacool said, to other countries and regions in the world. So that about covers it. We're not going to get any deeper in this. It becomes a political topic, so we're staying away from that. But strictly as it affects the computer hardware industry, this will change the prices in the not-so-distant future. So keep an eye out for it. And if you want to read more, there's plenty of material out there. USTR has all the documents for affected components if you want to see those as well. Thank you for watching. As always, subscribe for more. You can go to store.gamersnexus.net to pick up one of our mod mats, which is at the same price it's always been, even though we're paying 30% more for shipping, at least today anyway. And patreon.com/gamersnexus to help us out where there are no tariffs applied. Thank you for watching. I'll see you all next time.